So as Kyle mentioned, we're going to go over the new A-5000 series digital mixer amplifier. And basically, they brought this unit out to kind of get into the market of something that's more streamlined towards retail area and smaller kind of areas that need the performance with a built-in DSP. So to get started here, I'll fire up the webinar and off we'll go. So what we're going to do is go over the features, the models that are currently available, quickly go over the software, and then we'll go over the connections on the back of the unit for you. So the 5000 series, basically it's a brand new unit. It's not actually replacing any of our current models. You'll see that our 2000, our BG series, our A-700 series are all still currently available. But basically what they designed this unit for is something more of a sleek and elegant design. As you'll see, is the front part of this unit more of a nice kind of brushed aluminum on the front right-hand side to give it something more of an aesthetic-looking unit. What we found in the past is people kind of usually hid their units out in the back and didn't want to have anything to do with them just because it looked like more of a commercial-grade product. So the idea behind this one was to bring it out with more of a nicer-looking features and something you could put on a tabletop and not have to worry about anyone, complaining about the looks. Some of the features are obviously it's a 1U half-rack size unit. It does have a high-low Z speaker outputs. It does give you 2 mic line inputs with mute, plus 2 additional line inputs. Those will be RCA. So that gives you a total of 4 inputs. The first 2 obviously are selectable either from mic or line. It does have a 5-band PEQ for each input and output. It gives you a remote master volume control and has a compressor for each input. So the models that we have available, there's just 2 currently. It's the A-5006 and the A-5012. These both come in either 60 or 120 watt models, and that runs at either 4 ohm or 70 volts. Again, both units are the 1U half rack, and ideally you can link 2 of these side by side in a rack space. So not only do these not take up a full, typical say 3U rack space as most commercial amplifiers, you can put these side by side with the appropriate rack mounting kits. If you look at the front there, obviously you got your volume controls for each source inputs, gives you the signal peak and protect indicators, as well as your power on off there with the green LED ring. Talking about the rack mounting, just to give you an idea, this is how it looks. Depending on which kit you go with, you can either do the single U, half space rack unit, or the dual side by side. So depending on which version you want to go with, you either go with the individual components, or if you want to do 2 of them side by side, you would order that typical rack kit accordingly. So the single unit does obviously have that arm brace there, which will attach across the 19-inch rack width. And then just with the 2 units side by side, you just link them together with the link plates and then put on the rack gears, and you're pretty much good to go after that. Take a look at the back of this unit here is the connections. So depending on your application, we have various options to do here. Obviously, you have your 70 volt 4 ohm outputs. There is a 100 volt there as well, but it's typically not used here in Canada. You have your LAN connection, which will give you the local area access, and this allows you to do programming via the PC software, which we'll go over later. And then you have your standard mic line inputs on the right-hand side. So as mentioned before, the 2 screw terminal connections are your mic and or line inputs, as well as you have the manual mute control as well. So if you want to have a push button for your muting, you can definitely do that. Or you can do that basically with a line level and have just your main connection terminated there. So basically, depending on how you want to mix and match your sources, for say background music, for instance, maybe you only want to need say a 1-line input, so you'd connect that to the CD player, say option input line 3 or your MP3 player source, and then you basically be broadcasting music at that point. The mic line inputs can be set for muting as well, of course. So this is a handy feature if you have this connected to, say, a main paging source, or coming from like a system that you want to have override, and you can definitely do that and mute your auxiliary sources. The USB input that you do see there, that's just for factory configuration only. That is not an input for, say, a USB connection, so just keep that in mind. It's strictly only for factory updates and then nothing to do with any source control at all. Moving along to the software section. All the 5000 series are software programmable. You'll need this connection if you want to do any assignments, volume attenuation, either through a preset level. You want to do any of your compressor settings, any of your muting capabilities, and any of your presets. So this unit does come with 16 memory presets, which you can have controlled via the software, as well as we can link up multiple units. Now keep in mind, when you do link up multiple units, you'd be going through, say, a switch. The software allows you to look at a single unit one at a time. So when you do that, you'd be connected to a single unit, tune your programming settings, disconnecting, and then reconnecting to the second unit to do any more settings that you wish to do. So let's take a look at the software here. You probably recognize the splash page here. It does look similar to our M864, for example. What the TOA engineers are trying to do is kind of keep everything streamlined together and how the software looks similar, so that way any programming you'll be pretty familiar with going across all our product line. So looking at the software, once again, I'm just going to do the connection here. There's your connection from a PC through a switch, and then over to their connection via the LAN terminal. And again, if you want to do multiple units, you'll see the connection at the bottom there. The little router, your 5000 series, connected to the PC, and then you do all your programming setup there. So tiny little units. A lot of industry now is going to the LAN connection for programming, etc. So it's nice to see that our products coming out now all have this terminal for any programming. Hopefully this will be something we see a norm of and get rid of the older style RS-232 connection, which is still around nowadays, but it's obviously network configuration and setup is the way to go. Okay, software overview. So you have your unit name setting. You can tweak any unit input names to as you seek. You have your main mono outputs, which you can tag. So in this example here, I've set up for an office. And then you have obviously your leveling, which gives you the metering on the software side when connected. So you can have, say, a desktop on site that's running this unit and doing all your settings, your gain levels, etc. And it'll also give you live feedback. If the amplifier is, say, stuck in a remote location, you'll be able to see what's going on with your live metering. If you go across to the next section on this, you get your PEQ settings. This is both on the input and output side. So it's your 5-point PEQ attenuation. This is fully flexible. You can basically adjust the gain levels and frequency any way you wish. So if you want to do, say, a roll-off on the front end for our microphone inputs, you can definitely do that, as well as move across the board on the output side and add your, say, specific speaker EQ adjustments for a particular speaker brand. Inputs 1 and 2 do have compression settings. So if you want to have any level sets or preset for, say, when a microphone example gets enabled, you can definitely do that with your compression settings on 1 and 2. Just an added feature that was brought across from other products that had this as well. So it's kind of like a robust full DSP that we brought aboard and put it onto our 5000 series to give you guys more flexibility when you're doing a setup of a system. You got your muting as well. So depending on how you want to set it up, you could have, say, input 1 mute the rest of the sources, or you can only have it maybe mute a certain source. So you'll see your level and your attenuations all available. You got your hold time and your fader in time that's adjustable. So you can tweak any duration of how long you want it to hold that muting channel for, as well as when you want the sources to come back in after a page initiated. Typical scenarios would be something around 5 seconds of delay, and then your music would roll back in from a lower volume up to the max volume that's been preset at. Looking at the live meter display, there's a separate tab for that, so you do have a live meter display option here to look at. And basically give you your channel name, your level meter, your channel number, and of course any indication if you're going to go into your peak levels. This is a nice feature I like personally, just because we have run into various installs that end users have set up, and all of a sudden they start turning it up. A typical scenario would be for our retail environments in a mall where you have a store with a bunch of speakers hooked up. The kids go there to work, they're obviously turning stuff up, and obviously overpowering certain scenarios and situations. So right away, if anyone has access to the software, they can just jump on here, take a look at it, and take a look at the metering, and obviously adjust levels accordingly so that don't obviously damage the system or speakers. I did mention earlier, we have the 16 memory presets. So now what we can do is something similar that we have on the 9000 series and the M864. Now from the software, we can load different memory configurations. An example for this would be during the day, you'd use memory 1. Say you have everything set up for line level. You only want, say, input 3 to do its routing, and that's the only source they have on. But then come noon, you want to use inputs 1 and 2. You can load memory 2, have that preset there. Now all of a sudden, once you load memory 2, your other inputs are active, and your output levels are all the way that you set. This also can give you level adjustments, say, for volume levels. Maybe, like I said, in the morning, your levels are low. You don't want to bother anyone because it's a quiet time of day. You can have your preset levels on the software side brought down to a lower setting. And then obviously in the afternoon, you want to bring that up, you can just load memory 2, and it'll do that accordingly for you. Moving along, you're looking at system examples. So I kind of gear this towards more of maybe a retail setup. Medium-sized restaurants is a good option as well. You have dental offices and small businesses. So the main advantage you want to look at this unit, say over our BG series, is basically one, you have the software option as well as your preset option. But the main thing for me would be the fully customizable PEQ settings. Time and time again, we also often see a nice restaurant setup with really nice speakers, but there's no EQ thrown in there, or there's no processing, etc. So this amp will run that scenario for you and also give you your PEQ settings so you can really make a system sound the way it should. And right before I finish this webinar here, we did get some news of some additional features that would be coming to this unit. If you look at basically coming spring 2016, which is pretty much now, there will be a firmware update rolling out for these units, and this will add some interesting features as well. So FBS, feedback suppression, for channels 1 and 2. So now not only do we have the compression settings that's already there, we're also going to add feedback suppression, which is fantastic for scenarios where you have multiple mics set up and you worry about feedback because we're too close to speakers, etc. So that will be added coming in the next update. You have high-pass filters for channels input 1 and 2, and PEQ will be tweaked basically to the high-pass filter. So now this gives you that additional DSP function for your inputs. Auto mute with adjustable mute sensitivity, that's another feature. Now we can bypass the closure input to do muting, and it gives auto mute on channel input 1. Another cool thing is we got our 10-band selectable DSP filters for outputs. So we're going to have the high pass, low pass, and PEQ selectable on the output side. Another thing would be the 15 selectable TOA speaker EQ presets. So in previous versions of units, particularly the 9000, we had a certain amount of speakers preloaded in the software. So they're going to put these EQ settings back into this unit, essentially allow you to select a certain speaker or a specific speaker for your output. So now you can say, for example, choose F122 PEQ, and it'll load it there for you to save you doing any of your manual adjustments. Save and load file interface with PC separately from unit settings. So basically it's a load interface for if you have multiple units, you can load the same file across the board without any issues basically.